According to this book, love is not a feeling. It's more like your brain doing a math test. As a kid, you picked up ideas about what a good partner looks like. Everything you saw in your family, learned from friends, and felt during good times or traumatic times formed a sort of algorithm in your mind to determine what a partner should be like. Now, when you meet someone, your brain checks every box of this algorithm and gives them a score without you noticing. If the number is high, your body releases a rush of chemicals and you feel in love. But you only notice the rush. You never actually see the math that caused it. And here's the problem. The math can be faulty. Trauma and other hard experiences can twist your idea of what a good partner is, and your consequent algorithm may give higher scores to partners who are actually bad for you. So your brain can still hand out a top score and flood you with intense feelings, even though, objectively, the person it picked for you makes no sense. The emotion feels right, but the thing it unconsciously values aren't actually good for you. Welcome to The Value of Others, Est-ce qu'on reste passé? This book is written by Dr. Orion Taraban, who is a behavioral clinical psychologist specializing in human relationships and decision-making. Basically, he researches the motivators behind our subconscious decisions that eventually lead to conscious decisions. And I think he's still a practicing therapist as well, and a YouTuber. Hello, colleague. Anyway, his statement is basically the following in the book. All relationships are transactional in nature, and the way your brain selects a partner isn't based on emotions. Transaction is the primary structure and foundation, and love is only here as a consequence of that transaction. When the transaction no longer occurs, the love eventually extinguishes itself. Now, this might sound yucky and manipulative and very like math beep beep boop boop, but stick with me, because this book might show you that you are actually more calculating than you think. At least your subconscious surely is. I'm basically going to break it down, chapter by chapter, tell you the theories, the psychology behind the theories, and also give you my opinion as, well, someone who reads a lot. I think at this point I've read over 500 books and who's lived a lot and seen a lot. If not through my own experiences, through that of friends. So in chapter 1 of The Value of Others, Taraban dives into the idea of relationships as an exchange of hidden transactions. In romantic relationships, we're usually looking for love and intimacy. However, we're usually also looking, consciously or not, for things like increased social status, lifestyle upgrades, sexual satisfaction, or the comfort and self-esteem boost that comes with being adored. Ideally, we also want all of these things at a minimal personal cost. So we want them all without a very big energy input on our part or without the need to compromise a lot on our part. Have you ever stayed in a relationship because it made you look good to others? Because your friends thought you had scored the perfect partner? Or because it gave you access to a lifestyle you couldn't achieve on your own? Maybe you've even overlooked red flags because the emotional highs, the butterflies, the passion, or simply how they looked and what they did to you under the sheets felt worth the cost. Taraban argues that these decisions aren't purely due to attachment styles or energy or vibes. They're the result of your subconscious mind quietly weighing the pros and cons. At this point, you might think, I'd never use someone like that. But that's precisely Taraban's argument. You're not consciously using anyone. Rather, your subconscious mind does the math for you, quietly, making you feel attracted to someone, even dimming your ability to clearly see that you're technically at a disadvantage or in a bad situation, because the perceived value it assigns to the person in front of you aligns with your internal criteria. Taraban's theory also emphasizes why we sometimes crave people who aren't necessarily good for us. So like I said in the beginning, societal standards, past experiences, and trauma can distort our subconscious understanding of value. Our algorithm might have been written to assign as valuable someone with, for example, avoidant traits, low emotional availability, or poor communication skills. This causes us to then feel butterflies and excitement around these types of people, misinterpreting our feelings as a sign of true compatibility. Even complicated scenarios like abusive relationships can be understood through this transactional lens and value assignment system. So victims might remain in a harmful situation because they've become convinced, through manipulation, fear, or distorted self-worth, that staying is less costly to them than leaving. Maybe even thinking that this is truly the best they can do. Relationships typically end because they no longer bring us any value. Our spouse has become too complacent, has led us to financial distress, or has completely lost all ability to make us feel any type of way because they are still the same person they were 10 years ago, while we've evolved and grown. They have nothing left to give, teach, bring, or make us feel. And sometimes, even then, we don't leave because of emotions like nostalgia and attachment. We fear losing the energy and time we've already spent. We wonder if we could actually find something else, someone else. We cling to fading relationships like investors clutching plummeting stocks, paralyzed by the hope of a rebound and the fear of cutting our losses because of our initial investment. And here's the thing, sometimes those stocks do bounce back after proper restructuring and investment in growth channels, but more often than not, they keep falling. The question is, how long are you willing to wait for? First chapter, I more or less agree with everything he said. The only thing that I will add is that attachment styles, or who we end up wanting, isn't just based on this value system. It can also be based on a need to prove something as not true. If you grew up with very distant parents, you usually end up being attracted to distant partners to kind of get the ability to break the cycle, to prove to yourself that you're lovable, and that it wasn't your fault that your parents were distant. A lot of people also try to fill a specific type of void with their partner. So for example, if you have an abandonment wound and you end up dating very, I don't want to sound like mean, but like very mid partners compared to you, this typically brings you reassurance that they won't leave you because you're kind of quote unquote better than them. Or you might end up dating like bad boys or crazy girls because you might be a very good girl or boy and haven't been able to navigate the totality of who you are. And that's the transaction that's going on. The person allows you the ability to explore facets of your personality you don't allow yourself to explore, or they give you the chance to rewrite your past or fill a void. I think that my personal summary of the value system is basically your type is your trauma until your conscious rewrites your unconscious. That's not discussed within the scope of this book, but I will add my personal viewpoints here and there because I think it's interesting. Anyway, on to which explains the marketplace where this transaction system occurs, aka the dating world. If relationships are transactions, then sexual relationships operate in their own specialized economy, the sexual marketplace. Everyone enters this marketplace with a unique set of currencies. Currencies like attractiveness, social status, wealth, charisma, confidence, humor, and even popularity. And since any self-respecting market loves acronyms, Taraban gives this one its own, the SMV. Because who has time to pronounce anything fully these days? Individuals with a higher SMV naturally enjoy more leverage, which means that they have more options and can often be more selective. Think of someone who's conventionally attractive or financially well off. They usually can afford to raise their standards because they know there's a queue of interested admirers. Other people may need to compensate with other things, like wit, kindness, humor, communication skills, etc. The need to compensate can also explain why, in a lot of cases, you see very attractive or wealthy people who don't necessarily have these compensating traits like wit, kindness, or humor, because they never needed to develop these extra traits to compete in the dating market, if that makes sense. This is where you come across the hot but dumb jocks and bimbos of the early 2000s, as well as the financial bro archetype that knows how to manage their money, but not their partner. Obviously, these are all stereotypes, but stereotypes tend to exist for a reason. Moving beyond acronyms, Taraban offers a handy metaphor: dating as a docking system. In this analogy, some people take the role of boat captains, while others choose to be passengers. Listen, at least we're not being compared to cars anymore. If you're a captain and you want to be a good captain, your job is basically threefold. Number one, you got to build a boat, which basically means you need to gather resources like money, competence, and one thing that a lot of captains lack: emotional stability. Number two, you need to learn to sail, which basically means to develop conflict resolution skills, present yourself effectively, and maintain mental well-being. And number three, you need to plot a course. So you basically need to decide where you actually want to go in life, career-wise, relationship-wise, and personal growth-wise. Skip any of these three steps and you risk ending up with a shaky ship that attracts fewer passengers or just drifts aimlessly. Passengers, if they want to be good passengers, need to make sure they're getting on the right boat. That means, number one, they need to evaluate the ship. So they need to ask themselves whether or not the captain is financially responsible, if the captain can handle stress, if the captain is emotionally available. Number two, they also need to check the competence and leadership of the captain. So, does the captain steer through rough waters like conflicts and setbacks without sinking the ship? And number three, they obviously need to consider the destination. Are your life goals and the captain's life goals aligned in terms of marriage, kids, adventure, stability, finances? You'd be surprised by the number of people who don't have these conversations even before getting married. Now, obviously, passengers have to pay a ticket to actually get in the boat. This ticket can be in the form of emotional labor, compromise, loyalty, good company, love, and support, or whatever other skills or combination of skills you bring to the table. Maybe you're a great cook, a great trip planner, a great problem solver. Obviously, some passengers pay this ticket in the form of their physical appearance or willingness to pertain in a variety of carnal fantasies. Honestly, to each their own. What each must ask themselves is the journey worth the price? Now, let's dive into what constitutes SMV exactly. Here's where it gets tricky. Men and women aren't valued for the same reasons. Taraban states that men primarily value women based on physical attractiveness, youth, and fertility. Qualities signaling good genes and reproductive health. This doesn't mean that they only value women based on these, but it does mean that this is basically the first things and one of the most important things they consider when deciding to pair up with someone. Women, meanwhile, typically judge men by their resources, social status, confidence, and the lifestyle they can provide them with. These traits suggest security and a good quality of life. He also states that these traits are determined by our biology. Now, obviously, we're not cavemans anymore. And yeah, biologically, we're animals, but I don't think we possess, the consciousness level of an animal. At least most of us don't. And I do like to think that we also possess the capacity to transcend our biology, since a lot of people choose to not have kids, for example, or not have sex, like monks and priests and stuff. But regardless of what we go against, most of us have this original programming written in us. Because of this dynamic and who each gender is typically attracted to, younger, attractive women often get prioritized by men, while wealthier men tend to be more appealing to women. Wealth is also typically acquired in later ages, so these men tend to be older. Now, here's the catch. Perception, like social media has taught us, matters just as much as your actual traits. So traits that enhance how you're being perceived, like confidence, like style, like charisma, can all boost how others see your final SMV value. Taraban also states that women's attractiveness peaks early, between the ages of 18 and 25. That's when they have the most leverage to trade intimacy for commitment, security, or resources. And if you're over 25, you are wasted to the trash can, you old hag. Well, he doesn't actually say this. This is what I'm saying, okay? You're wasted if you're over 25. Men, on the other hand, build value slowly through experience, wealth, and confidence, which all peak in their 30s or 40s. So, according to him, the smart move for women is to lock in commitment early, and for men, it's to delay the commitment, build the status, and cash in later. This reveals his core belief that relationships aren't the destination, they're the strategies to maximize personal gain. Women want security, men want variety or validation. As for my opinion, I think that Taraban often crosses the line from his self-acclaimed realism into what I feel is full-on cynicism, especially when it comes to his advice for women and men. So to recap, his main advice for the girlies is to trade youth for wealth. And here, I'm going to go into a lengthy monologue which can be summarized into the following sentence. Baby girls, don't do it. Don't do it. I've met a lot of women who got married young and who quote-unquote used their looks to secure a higher status partner and seemed to win the game on paper. But fast forward a few years, most were either divorced or quietly semi-miserable. And again, I'm saying most because there are always statistical outliers in the world that play this game and win everything. And here's why the majority were either divorced or quietly miserable. It's because as you age, youth fades. If a man chooses a partner primarily for her youthful beauty, fertility, and carefree personality, all of these traits usually tend to diminish over time. Beauty, the physical kind, fades, fertility declines, and life responsibilities like kids or taking care of your sick parents or just being an adult tend to reduce the fun and carefree factor that a lot of men value. Consequently, infidelity risk goes up because men who obsess over youth and beauty often seek it elsewhere when it fades. I've seen it happen over and over again. You probably have too. A woman hits her 40s, her husband suddenly needs space, and finds that space between the legs of a younger girl. Now, I love beauty. I value beauty. And my boy Dostoevsky did say that beauty will save the world. And I honestly subscribe to that notion. However, beauty in terms of a specific physical appearance is fleeting because it's beauty forever stuck to a timeline. So it's superficial in nature. And superficiality goes hand in hand with emotional emptiness. If you were chosen for your looks, what happens when those looks no longer keep someone's attention? Well, you might get cheated on repeatedly. And if the person you're with is rich, they probably have the resources and excuses to do it pretty easily. Again, there are exceptions. Not every older, wealthy man dating a 20-something-year-old girl or guy or whatever is beauty obsessed. Sometimes, again, these things do last, but those are, say it with me, statistical outliers. Now, if you're a woman who's okay with that trade, which is essentially wealth over sustained emotional connection, that is 100% your choice. To me, equality means the right to choose, even if that choice is wealth over romance, because not everyone wants romance, to be honest. However, you need to make this choice consciously and not blindly, because social media really only shows the positive of that type of lifestyle, and there are always a lot of hidden cons. If you're gonna make this choice, make it with your eyes wide open. Don't be fooled by the sprinkle movement. However, I do agree with one part of his advice, that it's typically easier for a woman between the ages of 18 and 25 to meet a potential partner in the first place organically, because women between these ages are usually attending college, getting into internships, having their first jobs, which are all spheres where it's easy to meet a partner. The older you get, the less these types of new spheres you integrate, and the harder it is to meet someone organically. You can, of course, if you're older than 25, meet someone organically, but it will require more conscious effort the older that you get. Now, I also have an issue with the advice he gives the lads. Taraban's advice to men is equally blunt. Build wealth, gain status, and enjoy endless sex success. Yeah. And yes, success opens doors. No one is denying that. But, not to sound like a hippie, but does success bring joy, fulfillment, peace? You can find many more people claiming that their billions of dollars and access to beautiful women and beautiful men did not bring them joy because they weren't joyful to begin with. But let's just give a few examples here. You have Dan Bilzerian, parties, women, money, yet he's publicly admitted he feels empty. Sadia Khan's client, which is a therapist in Dubai that has very ultra wealthy men as her clients, they're all married to stunning women and they're all deeply unhappy.
When you're a broke man, you're limited in terms of the women you can access. Yeah. You can only access the limited range of women. So you're only going to access a simple kind of woman because you're a simple man. That simple woman doesn't have many options. So you're both optionless and you're both good to go. You've got a connection, you're good to go. Now, if you are a high value man, let's say for example, you're a George Clooney, you can access whoever you want in the world. So what happens is as a man becomes more successful, his criteria and selection of women becomes more provocative, promiscuous. It's usually the dream girl. That dream girl knows 10 of you. But if you choose that, simple girl that works in Starbucks, of course she's going to be loyal to you. But what high value man chooses that? He chooses the sexiest girl on screen. So I always say to men who are high value rich, especially in Dubai, before I've even met that girl, I'm like, she's cheating on you. Why? Because she likes you for your lifestyle and she knows plenty of men with your lifestyle. You're just covering her current bills.
Why? Because there's no emotional connection there. No real companionship. Honestly, again, like statistical outliers, some men will be completely happy with just sex. But most men, call me crazy to think that most men are just like normal human beings with emotions, but most men will be lonely with this type of lifestyle and they will feel shallow and unsustainable eventually. Maybe not at the start when they're having wild sex all the time, but like at some point anything gets boring. So contrary to what Taraban states, I don't think that the human brain thrives on like endless novelty and sex and woo. I personally think it being the human brain, male or female, thrives on meaning and connection. And sex, let's just like deconstruct his argument. Sex is literally the easiest, most accessible thing anyone under the sun can have access to nowadays. You have OF, you have videos online, you have people willing to be paid, you have women and men willing to partake in these things through apps. And statistically speaking, men are still depressed and suicidal, more so than ever. So clearly novelty and sex isn't the cure here. I think that what most men really want, eventually down the road, is a partner who sees them as more than just a wallet. It's a partner that supports them and offers more than just their physical beauty and sex. And to attract that kind of partner, honestly, you need more than just money, babes. And again, I'm not saying to not value wealth, to not value beauty, to not value sex. You should value all three, but more deeply so, you should value someone's character and emotional depth and shared values and genuine conversation. Because a good personality doesn't fade, it multiplies. Taraban's strategies might help you win the dating game on paper. Actually, no. Taraban's strategies will 100% help you win the dating game on paper. If you have money and you flaunt it tastefully, you will 100% land a beautiful woman or two or three. But if your goal is long-term happiness, meaning, and partnership, you honestly need to zoom out. So, what should you do instead? According to me, who is single, but very observant and surrounded by very successful relationships, and who has honestly seen my fair share of horrible relationships. For women, my advice is to be aware of every pros and cons of everything you're valuing, like money and social status, or a hardworking man. Otherwise, you might get trapped in the I didn't know it would be like that type of relationship. If what you want is wealth, and you're aware of the pros and cons of wanting wealth above anything else, then to maximize your potential of finding a wealthy partner, you should value your physical appearance. But if what you want is emotional connection and mutual respect, I don't think that you should lead with looks and sex alone, because this tends to intoxicate your partner and might make them act in a way that's not natural to them for a short period, making you think that this is who they are at their core. And if you do want both both wealth and love, you need to be honest with yourself. Are you offering the kind of value that can attract both? I know the online meme is like, what do you bring to the table? Oh, I am the table. But like, seriously, do you bring kindness, emotional maturity, humor, self-awareness? Because just looking good will attract men who only want to look at you or do things to you, not to build something with you. And for men, if you want a pretty woman who will probably get you lots of sex, then accumulate wealth. And if you're not there yet, honestly, accumulate muscles. Because women like to look at pretty things too, believe it or not. But if you want a woman who brings more than beauty to your table, then you need to bring more than status or muscles. You need to ask yourself, do I communicate like a grown adult? Because statistically speaking, you probably don't. Do I know how to handle conflict without shutting down or blowing up? Do I know how to treat women the way they want to be treated? Am I proactive in the relationship? Am I emotionally available? Should I maybe go to therapy or read a personal development book or two? Because here's the truth. Women who can raise children won't want to raise you too. Although honestly, a lot of them end up doing that. Regardless of your gender, my advice is to dig within the entrails of your soul and to be honest with yourself, to understand what you really want. Not what Instagram says you should want, not what dating coaches preach, not what society says you should value, not what your traumas dictate you're attracted to, but you, untraumatized you. What do you actually want? Because until you get clear on that, you'll either keep playing someone else's game or keep wondering what you keep losing your own. And trust me, this takes a lot of digging. Taraban ends his book with a bold claim. Relationships are no longer necessary. Back in the day, marriage was essential. Men and women needed each other to survive, to raise kids, to share resources, and to navigate life. But the world has changed drastically. Birth control decouples sex from reproduction, making commitment optional. The internet and social media created an endless stream of potential partners accessible from your couch. Women are more empowered, educated, and financially independent than ever. Many no longer need men for security. Meanwhile, men who fall behind in status or income risk being left out of women's dating pools entirely, while high-value men enjoy more sexual options than ever, making them less inclined to settle down. The result? Partnership is now optional. Fewer people are marrying, fewer are having kids, and more are turning to friends, flings, or even online platforms to meet their emotional or physical needs. And according to Taraban, this isn't a crisis, it's the new normal. He goes further, suggesting that the idea of traditional monogamy might actually be outdated. In his words, trying to turn back the clock is a losing game. Instead, he predicts a gig economy of relationships. People will choose different partners for different roles, for co-parenting, for romance, for companionship. It's a modular approach that is more flexible and gives less pressure for every human need to be fitted into just one person. Taraban's final tips are the following. Number 1, you should accept the transaction. Love alone does not sustain a relationship. Value does. You have to ask yourself, what do I offer that others want and can't easily find elsewhere? Number 2, you have to keep improving yourself. Whether it's fitness, emotional intelligence, or financial stability, standing still equals falling behind because you're not competing with your neighbors anymore. You're competing with the world. Number 3, never get complacent. Keep your options open. The moment you feel safe, your leverage drops. Number 4, date within your realistic SMV. Aim too high and you'll overpay emotionally or financially. Aim too low and you'll regret it later. As for my final opinion, I think that this book claims to be realistic, but I think it leans too far into cynicism. Yes, relationships involve value exchange. I agree. It's been eye-opening to see it so clearly stated as someone who's usually subscribed to emotions and feelings rather than logic, at least in romantic partnerships. I used to chase the highs and deliriums of emotions, and this was a much needed sobering slap, especially to someone like me whose value system honestly needs a good algorithmic rewriting. I think that the only types of relationships that even try to be unconditional in nature are parents-children ones, and even those honestly have limits. But I think Taraban gives sex way too much weight. Sure, it's a powerful motivator, it's very, very powerful, but Other powerful motivators are love, spirituality, connection, friendship. Some people actually value friendships, purpose, and connection deeply, often more than sex. So reducing everything to desire or utility kind of misses the point. Overall, I would give this book a solid 3 out of 5. I actually liked it. Most relationship books focus on feelings, emotions, and how to communicate better. So this one was refreshing. It gave me a new lens through logic, structure, and the mechanics behind relationships. But just like I no longer believe that love alone will make any type of relationship last, I also don't believe that value exchange is the only glue that holds people together. Relationships are layered. They're complex, they're messy, they're beautiful when done right. You can't reduce them to just one formula. There's no single value system that can explain it all. The more dimensions you're aware of, emotionally, psychologically, physically, spiritually, the better chances you have of creating something that's fulfilling in both relationships and life. I think that the average modern human has been conditioned to value the wrong things in most aspects of life. And this book is both a wake-up call to that, as well as an active participant in further adding to the statement, because it ends up giving too much value to the wrong things, in my opinion. The real question this book left me with, and that I now ask you to ask yourself, is the following. What does your unconscious brain value? And why did you come to value these things in the first place? Because between what you think you're attracted to and what you actually end up being attracted to lies an ocean of unconsciousness and trauma.